Hey everyone, welcome to another Leadership Talks podcast. I am Wilka Nascimento, I'm your host, and today I have Jason D'Agostino. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
How is everything in New York?
New York is booming. Things are going well. Keeping busy.
Yeah, so Jason, I wanted you to go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners, our viewers, followers, because I know you have an extensive background in hospitality. So take the mic.
Thank you. So, Jason D'Agostino, certified revenue management executive, most recently with Visions Hotels, where I oversaw the growth and development from 25 assets up to 70, predominantly in the New York State area with assets in Boston, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. We did some work in Atlanta as well. And looking at different opportunities, there's talk about possibly a soft launch of our own sales, marketing, and revenue management firm, and exploring all different opportunities. So it's fun times in hospitalities because despite the economic uncertainty that there is, we're still growing. And I think that a lot of that ability to grow really stems from our proven ability to be resilient.
And talking about growth, I just wanted to, since you brought that up, I would love for you to um, think back, right? Like from your beginning days, your early days in the industry. What is the most different and innovative situation, either on the commercial excellence team that you've experienced, or even on the ground running within hotel teams that you've experienced throughout your career?
There's so many great examples. And, looking back, I started my career in hotels in food and beverage. I started as a line cook after graduating Johnson & Wales University with a degree in baking and pastry arts. Never did I think I would be in revenue management, but I remember vividly being in a Wednesday stand-up meeting, and we are meeting the revenue manager and wondering, okay, so they're coming to this meeting with these big binders and these clipboards, and a lot of that's changed, right? There's no more big binders, there's no more clipboards. Everything today is done on a smartphone or a tablet. And we could thank all of the technology and all of the different pieces of integration um, for that. It's really helped us all in the industry become more efficient and eliminate the redundancies. Now, I think the next step to that, and I was speaking with somebody yesterday about different property management systems, right? And what the evolution of a PMS system looks like. And I think the evolution of that kind of tie in right back into efficiency and all is how do we get the sales piece, the sales tracking mechanisms integrated into that so that we can make it easier for our sales teams so that they don't have to wait for a revenue manager or an inventory manager to say, yes, we've got 50 rooms available. You could book at X, right? And I see you laughing because I know we were talking, and it probably is striking some memories for you. My goal for our revenue teams is what do we do to make it faster so that the client doesn't have to wait, so that our sales teams can achieve their goals.
Absolutely. And I think, this is a wonderful point that you bring, because we are always trying to make things efficient. But, even with a transition of, sales systems or PMS systems, I've experienced when, I was on property, and the promises, right? Like I remember that I joined this boutique hotel actually when I moved to DC from New York, and it was a new PMS, and they were like, oh yeah, all of your history is going to be transferred and blah blah blah. Next thing you know, I had zero, right, history, and it was tough because it's almost like it's new. The system is new, and the salesperson promised me something. And coming from a salesperson, I am, and I'm like, I never overpromise at all, because if I'm not gonna deliver, and I think this industry, right, like the challenges of having this improvement, right, and between operations and sales, and how everybody needs to be aligned, not just on property, but also on the commercial excellence team. I think, that information needs to come to the people that are actually on the ground working on a daily basis, with, the front desk teams and so forth. But definitely I'm passionate about, this topic, because again, you can't be so efficient, right, with your sales revenue calls weekly that we have, when your own sales tracking doesn't work properly, because then how you're going to report all of the work that you did, during the week. So it's definitely one of my pet peeves, backing on property. But I wanted to hear from you, like, did you, because I know your last position, you grew a team from, I believe, 25 to 70 properties, if I'm not mistaken. I wanted you to share this experience with us, because definitely it's tremendous.
Absolutely. No, and it was a privilege to have that opportunity with the group that I was with. And they gave me the opportunity, coming off of a successful operations role that I had. I was first started with the group as a regional operations manager, overseeing a small portfolio of about 9 properties up here in Rochester, New York, multiple brands. And, I think I was tapped for this position, not only because we knew we could save money, right, as opposed to paying the brands to do it, but we wanted the opportunity to do it better, owning the process and owning it all in-house, as opposed to paying the brands. And please make no mistake, I think the brands have a significant role and do a great job. But when the same person is signing the revenue manager's check, is signing the salesperson's check, and the whole operation, it by nature, it brings something different and special to that. You're really officially part of that team, that sales, marketing, and revenue team. So fast forward, I took on that opportunity and never looked back. We started with a small group of hotels. We knew that the company was going to be acquiring and building more Marriott properties. So it was important. It was mission critical for me to be that subject matter experts on the Marriott brand of hotels. Probably one of the most complex brands out there, but complex for a reason, because Marriott does a great job at doing what they do. They do it quite well. So we started with Marriott. At the same time, I was learning the IHG brand, getting all of my earning my certifications in revenue management within these brands. And then they make it even more complicated, because if you want to manage their extended stay hotels, you have to take another set of certifications. So we did that. And as we're doing that, I am growing the portfolio of hotels that I am managing. So I'm kind of taking a hybrid approach, where some of the hotels was still with the brand and some of them were being onloaded to myself. And then we got to a point where we said, look, saving money is great, but we have to avoid diminishing returns. How do we do that? Let's start scaling up the department. Let's bring on another leader. So brought in another person who was a general manager of one of our Hilton hotels. Fantastic individual. This person really knows the back end systems, understands the property management systems. And when I developed the departments, I wanted to have it set where we were built not geographically, but built on um, brand centric. And the reason why I took that approach is each brand evolves. Every day there's something new happening, right?
Every single day. Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
whether you're on Hilton lobby, whether you're on Merlin or, MGS, there's just so much data out there and a lot of different brand requirements to stay with. And then post COVID, what we found was not only was the brand changing everything every day, but our OTA partners changing their algorithms, changing how they perform or what they could do for us. So really to set a department up for what I saw being ultra successful was myself being the, person who had all of the certifications, who could understand at a high level how the different brands work, but still being that Marriott specialist. And then having our revenue managers, and then we started bringing on additional revenue managers as the hotel company was growing our ownership. So we owned and operate all of these assets. We just started bringing on more former GMs from within our company who were with our company for at least 10 years. And up until recently, it was myself and 3 other revenue managers, again, really having a specialty in their specific brands. And then 2 analysts who helped us building out the packets and really just helping us create that, information slide that we would present to our general managers and stakeholders during our revenue calls.
And God forbid, talking about presenting impacts with all of this budget season ending.
We are, yes. And I just recently did another podcast where we were talking about 2026 budget season. And there's just so much data out there, right? And then, one of the things I am telling people more and more is top line revenue does not necessarily equal bottom line health, right? So when we're looking at this, we need to let our operators know we need to price for profits. And that may mean looking at our KPIs differently, where in the past there was such a huge focus on RevPAR. That RevPAR focus may work better at a specific type of asset. Whereas if we're looking at a full service asset, are we looking at total RevPAR? Well, Jason, what's total RevPAR? How about the total square foot profitability and the revenue that we're getting by maximizing the square footage of the hotel, of the asset? So different ways of looking at revenue management and the KPIs to determine whether or not a group inquiry makes sense. How often, from sales, somebody, you go to see the revenue manager and the answer is no. Well, my first thing for any of my revenue managers is we don't say no, we say how, right? I always like to take that approach, and we want to be approachable, and we want everybody to make money and achieve their goals. So when I'm looking at a piece of business for the displacement analysis, it's what is that total revenue opportunity for the hotel? And although the room rate, maybe that room rate doesn't look what you thought it may have been. And when you're looking at segmentation year over year, perhaps it's not, maybe it's a little bit lower. But don't forget that segmentation report does not include any food and beverage or ancillary revenue. So we have to look at the big picture, the entire operation of our hotel, because at the end of the day, the outlets are going to stay open whether you have business coming in or not. Brand standard. Let's make money when we do it.
And this is a point also that it's dear to my heart, the displacement analysis, because When I started in sales, right, back in Baltimore, and I was just like hitting the ground running. The Johns Hopkins Hospital was our bread and butter, so I was there like literally 3, 4 times a week out of 5 days because I was maximizing in that particular, bread and butter. But that was the green days, right? Because you can't spend so much time with one account, right? And I believe, this is also taking into consideration when you are getting that displacement analysis to the revenue manager, because who is this inquiry coming from? What is the relationship behind this particular client? And, if this client uh, will bring more business in the future, what is the true potential? Like, I think when salespeople, it blows my mind, honestly, when back in the day we had hours, right? Like 4 hours to respond to an RFP, or, and then became 2 hours. And then, God forbid, you were in front of your computer to answer those, inquiries. And then next thing you know, I have regional salesperson emailing me, why haven't you responded? I'm like, hello, I'm on property. Things are happening throughout the hotel. I see the emails coming in. Obviously, when I have my downtime, I'll sit down, relax, I will answer this today. But I think that sense of urgency and pressure, not just, in downtown DC or, Manhattan, it's like hotel salespeople, they are so um flexible, right? Because you have to be willing to meet and greet your clients that are coming through the door, number one. And I cannot tell you how many times I've visited hotels, and the front desk just says, oh, Will Casey here. Oh, yeah, I don't have time today. So I'm like, I remember back in the day when I was on property, I'm like, sure, of course, whoever this person is, they're already here. Half of my job is already done. Right. And I believe there is a shift. I don't know if it's specifically after COVID, because, I've always led my sales teams that way. If somebody's here, a client or a prospect, or, a bride wanted to see the rooftop, why not? You go down, you take care of that client. Oh, yeah, we got an RFP. Sure. Let the emails pile up. The person is here. It's again, hospitality, it's about people, it's about, the relationships. So, definitely, I think there is a lot to, I love when you said, you know, about the goals for different hotels and budgeting, but then also like what is the potential, not just, in room nights in RevPAR, but like how much they're bringing food and beverage. So I think, hotels, sometimes they are forgetting, that particular segmentation, that it's so important, because in the end of the day, food and beverage is not just part of the catering director, right, or the operations manager. It's the whole group, right? The hotel's operations in general, but also how do we compensate, right? Because let's be honest. I believe salespeople, they do the job, yes, because they're salespeople, but in the end of the day, it's a profit for business, right? Everybody wants to know what is there for them. Where
Absolutely.
is their bonus out in the end of the day? So yeah, I wanted to hear from you. Yeah, from this experience and in talking budget here, how have you led your teams to come from commercial excellence goals, KPIs, with, the sales director, the catering director, and operations manage as a whole? What is the secret sauce there for the alignment of the teams?
As revenue managers, we're in the trust business. And first and foremost, we have to earn that trust of the stakeholders. And you have to be approachable. They have to know that even if you're a part of a centralized revenue team where you're not on property, they need to feel as if you are. And I start with that. and we have our weekly cadences, or perhaps it's a hotel that has a bi-weekly cadence. What's stopping you from calling that general manager in the morning and saying, hey, great job on that sellout last night? Hey, great job. We're going to sell out tonight. I just bumped the rates by $10, $20, whatever that is. Let them know that you are engaged in that property. And the same with our sales teams, right? We shouldn't wait until quarter end to recognize the success stories. We need to do things intermittently in between to share in the success. And sure, when there's opportunities, we need to look at those too. But we need to go back to we're in hospitality. And if we're going to take care of strangers in our hotels, we need to be able to take care of one another that we see every day, that we rely on every day to achieve our mutual goals. So I think first and foremost, it comes from that collaboration between sales, marketing, revenue, operations. The second part of that is data points. The data is there. It is there for us to learn from. It is there for us to grow from and make decisions together from. So as we're sitting down doing 2026 budgets, we need to make sure that everybody is in, whether it's the room, the boardroom, conference room, whether we're together on a Google Meet, we need to include everybody on those calls. The moment that one participant is not involved, that's when the silo effect starts to get created. And sometimes it doesn't happen purposely, but it could just happen as a result of something. And we need to avoid that, because who's responsible, right? At the end of the day, the GM is most likely that ultimate person that's responsible. But a lot of times I feel that people are going directly to the revenue manager because they want a quick answer, because the revenue manager has that data point right at the click of 2 or 3 buttons, right? So we need to make sure that everyone is on the same page. And when we do that, I think that really helps bring it all together. And then one of the things that I instituted that's helped us optimize our engagements is creating a 1-page engage worksheet that I ask all general managers to complete prior to coming onto a revenue call. It's not for me, it's for the general manager, so that the GM isn't just going to the revenue meeting to check it off the box and said, yes, I did this week. But it's so that they know where they ought to budget for the next 30, 60, 90. Do we have any groups that need to be washed? Are we achieving 100% MPI? If not, what are the 3 segments that are down year over year, right? Very high level bullet point questions that don't take a lot of time, but it is very helpful so that the GM can come to that meeting and contribute and maximize that time so that there's a good dialogue, because revenue management meetings could go one of 2 ways. They're either one way driven from one person, or it's a collaboration between multiple people. And the most successful revenue meetings that are going to drive profitability for our ownership is the ones that have collaboration.
Absolutely, Jason. And that's, I think my last hotel, I did have a wonderful GM. So shout outs to Wes Santos. I always give him shout outs because literally, how the team is engaged, because it's not just about the salesperson or the front office manager, but also the entire team, right? Like the culture that he builds in that hotel. Um, I believe definitely, one of those checkpoints in what you said, it's the engagement between the teams, but also, from operations team in housekeeping, right? Like when they had an inspection and they got, like the other day I saw on LinkedIn, um, a GM posted, oh, we got 94% on inspection and we passed with stellar numbers. This is fantastic. She's not just sharing with her team, she's sharing with the world. And once, and especially, like, I believe her hotel had never got that level of inspection, so it was fantastic to see. But then also is an effort, and the congratulations is not to her only, right? It's the housekeeping manager. And I believe, being able to have those conversations and stand ups every day with all of the head departments, but also when you see, right, like a housekeeping or they need anything in the hallway, they're talking to guests, like how your team, the entire team at the hotel, really interact and engage with the guests. That's a one of a kind experience from 0 to 100. Definitely, I believe when you enter the hotel as a guest, you can feel, right, like the hospitality, if that team is aligned on the property level or not, because
Absolutely.
the front desk is going to look at you. They're going to welcome you on a genuine smile. The same, steps that we learned back in, the Marriott days, right? It's amazing how really the core values of the industry has not changed. But, for my experience, even, trying to, again, back on my last experience, trying to add a chat box to the hotel front desk. And I've used, right? Like I've had good experiences and not so great experiences using chat box. Like I remember I went to this hotel in Chicago and I got a text message. And that was the first time, probably like 15 years ago, that I had a hotel texting me. And I thought, honestly, I did not know there was a chat box. I thought they were like knew that I was, an employee. It was an intercontinental in Chicago. And then they were like, oh, do you need reservations? I'm like, yes, I need reservations. Thank you so much. And I was with my sister. So I thought they were like, oh, she's a VIP, literally, because it didn't feel, there was a chat box. It felt that they knew what I was looking for, for that weekend. But even like on the other hand, when you're trying to operate that, it's so challenging because even the teams, how do you get them to actually engage and answer, right? Because even if you are answering the phone and the phone, you're by yourself and then there's a line of people trying to check in. So all of those, how to optimize, right, the AI tools that we have, but then also make sure not that we're just like checking the box neither and just say, oh yeah, we have this, but you don't use it on very well, on the capacity to actually make it better for the guest experience and for the entire team.
You're absolutely right, and you bring up a very good point, right? Because there's so much talk about AI and where this is going. You just brought up a great example where the machine learning element still needs to learn, and it takes that human person to go back into the system and recondition it and validate when this scenario happens, do X, right? And give it the parameters. So we keep talking about the fears that AI is going to take over. We could put guardrails up today to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I think right now we're at a point where we need to go back into some of these systems and validates. And going back to revenue management, right? So every RMS system that has, and all revenue management systems have had machine learning before AI started to become the buzzword of the day, right? In order to make those systems work properly, you have to put those guardrails in. You have to tell the system that this is the floor rate, this is the ceiling rates. You have to tell the system on the GPO and a group pricing optimizer, this is the low point, this is the cost per occupied room. And then, this is what we would look at when there's food and beverage attached to it. Because, to your point earlier, we need to know, if we're going to talk about what the full scope of a piece of business is, we need to, whether it's the person or a machine that's going to generate rate recommendations or automatically open or close an RFP, it needs to be taught and told what to do. So it's a challenge for smaller hotels, like you said, limited staffing, they go back and forth with these chatbots, but it's up to the GM or that other manager on duty or another individual to step back in and say, okay, this is what statistically this is happening over X period of time. Let's go back and let's recondition the system to work to optimize the right way.
And also, I believe when you're training the staff, right? Like, definitely I've been in positions where, right, like, oh my gosh, the RFP that had, I don't know, 50 steps to complete, and I forgot one, and I don't even know where is the one out of the 50 missing the piece of information. So when you hit submit, it never goes through. And you, as a salesperson, because phone is ringing, other things are happening, you're like, okay, I've done, I answered, I put the rate in. And how are you actually making that RFP enticed for that piece of business when there's so many steps to be completed? And especially too, I believe, back on what you said on the tools that you use in revenue management. Why is the revenue team oftentimes, not talking about everybody, not sharing those tools with the DOSs or, the sales managers or the GMs? Because in the end of the day, if everybody's trained on how to place the rates correctly for you to analyze, go up, $10 or $20 in the day for the day. And God forbid, revenue manager is not on call or is out on vacation, and what I've seen so much also, it's like, I wanted to pick your brain about the 300 million, right? That you were responsible. I'm like, how did you guys manage, right? Like, when one person goes out on vacation, and I know there is other, a person in the behind the scenes, but it's not, that person is not really involved in every conversation, in every detail. They don't know the market, for instance, because there's so many hotels that they have to oversee.
Sure.
Right. So it's like, what is that, again, flow, right, of communication between the revenue teams and the sales teams, therefore GMs too?
I'll start with the flow of communication with the sales teams because everybody does it differently. And I've heard, okay, Jason, this is too much information. Okay, Jason, this is not enough information. So how do you put together a packet that makes the most sense? And when we spoke earlier about communication, it's all right. If this is the packet today, what do you really want? We could build a packet with a ton of analytics, but analysis paralysis, right? And we want to make it easy. So let's agree with what are the real 3 to 5 reports that you want to see as part of a revenue packet. And then it's up to you, the sales team, to take that packet and look at it for what you want it to, because there's so much information that's in there, right? And with that, revenue managers need to also carve out some time to do some training sessions. What are these reports? What do they mean? Staffing people come and go. Technology changes, as we said earlier, and the brands are constantly making changes to their reports and what's accessible or not accessible. So how do we make it easier to understand? And I think one of the biggest things we need to do is continue on with, at minimum, quarterly training sessions for our sales teams and our general managers so that they can easily glance through the reports and, you know what, maybe say, you know what, we need to spend a little bit more time on the segmentation report, right? We want to learn, okay, how to take that segmentation report and look at it day by day against the star report, which is probably the most powerful way to look at things. And then how do we incorporate, you know, reports from Amadeus, right? You know, Demand 360, Agency 360. How do we incorporate those reports? So I like to start with that. Your other question, how do you manage at scale when you're talking portfolio, a company of over 300 million, and maybe somebody wants to take some PTO, which, you know, I encourage? It's communication, it's trust, it's setting the guardrails, it's knowing the market. And let's talk about knowing the market. Yes, we've got revenue managers that are great at what they do. But I tell every GM, it's still your hotel. You know that market better than anybody. You know that customer better than anyone. And with that customer, you also know the price elasticity maybe better than anybody. You know when someone's coming in for a walk-in, what can you really get, especially on those days of high demand. And that's important. It's powerful information because as much as I could pull charts and statistics and all these fancy things, the human element that GM is going to bring back is also important because, to your point earlier, you know, guest service and guest expectations, they're higher than ever. People are paying more than they ever have. So what's the price perceived value, right? And how do we incorporate that into what we do? It's very important. It's something that I don't think revenue managers are doing. We could do better at, right? You know, because yes, we talk a little bit about operations, but we don't necessarily not everyone's tracking that correlation between guest service scores. Hilton's doing a great job at doing it, and I know others are following, but the value for price paid is a big one. But back to managing it at scale, our GMs, we encourage our GMs to look at their rates for the day of and the next 3 days against their top 2 competitors. And if you see something, say something, because that's the only way we can move the needle. We are privileged by having some great revenue management tools through our brand partners with some automation, which again is only as good as the revenue management team putting in those guardrails, right? Those floors and ceilings so that we can optimize. And then it's hard work. It's not easy. Despite technology, the revenue manager still needs to go in, and when somebody's off, I have the privilege of watching over that hotel when they're off, and we encourage everybody to shut their phones and enjoy their time.
Yeah, definitely. I love this conversation, but also I wanted to hear from you if you have any mentors that you want to give a shout out and why this person was, you know, important in your career.
I have a number of people who I owe a great deal to. Gary Eisenberg is one of them. Early on in my career, and I learned a lot from him, but one of the best sayings that he always had, you know, he would say 85% of the outcome comes in the first 15% of the plan, right? So take your time, plan it right, and the outcome is going to be well. I started off in food and beverage. I mentioned earlier, I worked for a great executive chef, Dan Dorothy, who even in revenue management, I am still able to take some of the things that I learned from Dan, from food cost, beverage cost, and the rigor that we put into things in the culinary departments, and how we optimize and apply that throughout my career. There's a lot of other people, and I'm sure that they know who they are, and I'm grateful to them all.
And if you could also think about, for the next generation of hospitality professionals, right? I had a pleasure the other day to speak with a class, and it's just like, how are people interested in joining our industry and the reasons behind, right? But then what do you think or suggest, as an inspiration for those folks, just, coming out of college?
So at Johnson and Wales University, I had the privilege of meeting one of the executive chefs um, at the White House. And I asked him a very similar question. And he said, do 1 year in the front of the house, do 1 year as a baker, do 1 year in regular culinary, 1 year in the different aspects of where the specialties were. And if you take that principle, some call it job hopping, others may call it trying to earn your stripes in the different departments so that you could be that GM. Because I think that the best general managers are the ones that are able to say, I've ran that housekeeping department. I've ran that culinary departments. I know what the reservations department looks like, right? And once you do that, you could then become the real coach of the hotel and move your way up and do so successfully.
Wow, absolutely. I'm gonna do a party start here. Because actually I have a secret. I never said that out loud, but I've worked in different departments, but I never had the desire to be a GM. I'm like, I've always wanted to be in the sales department. And then, when COVID came and everything changed, I was employed throughout the pandemic. And I was lucky to be able to have that resilience brought back to where I started, because as a Brazilian first generation immigrant in the US, I didn't start in sales right off the bat, right? I was a housekeeper. I worked, as a dishwasher in Vermont, from all places. And once you have the knowledge also of passing through and knowing how hard it is to really get your hands dirty, you know that you can relate to most GMs because they all have been through the same, experiences similar than yours. But Jason, I wanted to thank you so much for this time. It's been
Thank you.
wonderful talking to you and learning further. Any final words to our listeners?
Let's get ready for budgets. Here's the 2026, a successful year ahead.
Cheers to that.
Pricing for profits.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate you all listening. And Jason D'Agostino, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.